Level 1. The invisible ceiling. Your grandmother kept cash in a coffee can, not because she didn't trust banks. She did. She just didn't trust herself to not spend it if it lived somewhere she couldn't see it. A Maxwell House tin, red lid, pushed to the back of the cabinet above the refrigerator. Emergency money, just sitting in the dark, waiting for something bad. That image is your entire financial education. It was the way your mother's jaw tightened when the car made a noise. The way your father changed the subject when someone mentioned retirement. The way every conversation eventually hit a wall. You absorbed it completely, without knowing you were doing it. Money was a source of shame before you knew what money was. You didn't get the school trip permission slip signed because the fee was $12 and it was the wrong week. You wore the same 3 shirts on rotation and got very good at pretending that was a choice. You learned not to ask for things because the look on their face when you asked was worse than not having the thing. That look taught you more than any classroom ever did. It taught you that wanting more was dangerous. That ambition was something other people had. That the correct posture for someone in your position was gratitude for what you had, not hunger for what you didn't. And for a long time, you believed that. The ceiling was invisible because nobody ever pointed at it. Nobody had to. You just kept growing until you hit it, and then you stopped growing. But something was wrong. You could feel it before you could name it. This low-grade static in your chest that wouldn't go away. A sense that the map you'd been handed didn't match the terrain you were standing on. That the rules you'd been taught were real, just not for everyone. And then one day, something cracked. Level 2. The first crack. You're 17, maybe 22. The age doesn't matter, the moment does. You're sitting somewhere unremarkable. A break room, a bus, your childhood bedroom at midnight with a laptop screen lighting your face. And you read something, and a single thought enters your mind with the quiet force of a crowbar. They just decided the ceiling wasn't real. It doesn't feel like empowerment. It feels like vertigo. Like you've stepped off a ledge, and you don't know if there's ground or just more air. You start reading, obsessively, quietly. You don't tell anyone because you already know how it lands. Your circle has an efficient immune system. It identifies ambition and attacks. You read at night, you watch videos in headphones, you fill a notebook with ideas. You are building a private world inside your head. You try your first thing. Maybe it fails in a week. Maybe it limps along for 6 months before dying quietly. It doesn't matter. What matters is, you tried. You've separated yourself from 90% of people who spend their lives saying, I should have. But separation has a price. The invoice is coming. Level 3, the grind nobody posts about. 2 years in, maybe 3. Your bank account does not reflect the hours you've put in. This is the part they skip in highlight reels because it's ugly and slow. This is you, tired in a way sleep doesn't fix. Doing something for the 100th time that still isn't working. Your friends stop inviting you out. You told yourself that's fine. Your family starts asking, when is this going to turn real? Your mother asks if you need money. The fact she's offering money she doesn't have makes it worse. You take a loss, not a small one. You have to sit with that specific humiliating number and figure out what it means about you. One specific 3 a.m. moment where the project seems stupid. Where the voice that sounds like every doubter gets loud. It says, that's not a coincidence, that's data. You get up because the alternative is going back. The version of you that accepts the ceiling doesn't exist anymore. You burned the floor on that side. There are conversations you simply don't have anymore because the distance has become too wide to bridge. That loneliness settles in quietly, like sediment. Maybe it's the first month your side income matches your rent. Maybe it's the first time a stranger pays you for something you made. It's a number that would have seemed like a typo. It arrives on an ordinary Tuesday. You stare at it. Then you close the laptop and go to bed. There's no one to call. The person you most want to tell wouldn't understand. They haven't been inside the days that produce this. So you sit with it quietly. You believe the ceiling is breakable. Before you knew it intellectually, now you know it in your body. That's the difference between reading about altitude and actually breathing thin air. What gets worse? The stakes. Now you're afraid it will work, and then stop. You become protective in a way that borders on paranoia. You reinvest everything. You stay uncomfortable on purpose because comfort is where momentum goes to die. You've learned that now, the hard way. Level 5. The crossing. The number becomes real on a Wednesday. You run the numbers 100 times, and this time they clear. 7 figures. The first time that number applies to you, to your name. You check it twice, you close it, you open it again, you close it. You thought this moment would feel like a finish line, like a specific release of breath. Instead, it's quiet. The profound, disorienting quiet of crossing a threshold. There's no reference for this in your family's vocabulary. Your parents don't have a word for what you just became. The emotional language doesn't exist. And so you sit in the silence of it like a man standing in a room where all the furniture has been removed. You want to call your mother. You talk for 20 minutes. You don't mention the number. You don't know how to say it without sounding like separation, like you on one side of a river and her on the other. So you say you're doing well. She says, eat something real, not just whatever's fast. You hang up and sit in the quiet for a long time. Here's what the money does immediately. It reveals an entirely new set of problems you didn't know existed, decisions that require knowledge you don't have. You grew up with a coffee can above the refrigerator. Nobody left you a manual for this. Millionaire is not the end of education. It's the beginning of a harder one. You are not the same person, but you're still from the same place. And those two things have to learn to live inside you. That tension will cost you more than the grind. Level 6. The gap. You go home for the holidays. It's the same house, same smell in the walls, same too loud television, same uneven table. And yet there's a gap now, not between you and the people. You love them with the same intensity. The gap is between the life you left and the life you're living. You pay for dinner. You say it's nothing. They say you didn't have to. There's a micro silence that lasts exactly long enough to be uncomfortable. You start losing people who aren't leaving. No confrontation, just a gradual drift. Like two boats where someone's incrementally letting out the rope. Old friends treat you differently. Some become quieter. Some become louder, probing, looking for the version of you that proved you haven't changed. One friend makes a comment that lands wrong. Something that sounds like a joke but carries the full weight of resentment. You both pretend the moment passed. You also lose people who are leaving. Relationships that couldn't survive the version of you that stopped shrinking. A partnership that started to buckle. You grieve these losses quietly. Success can be isolating in the same specific way to failure is. Both leave you sitting alone wondering if anyone sees you clearly. And then there's the guilt. The guilt of watching your mother still worry about money when you could write a check that would end it, but not knowing how to do it without changing you. The guilt of growing up. The guilt of surviving something that wasn't supposed to be survived. You carry it like extra weight. You get used to it. Level 7. The weight. Making it feels like freedom, but there's a weight. You are the first. That means you have no map. No one can tell you how to hold this. The wealth stops at one generation unless you build the architecture to carry it forward. You're building the blueprint and living in the building at the same time. You want to give your kids security, not the version that becomes its own prison. The kind that removes all friction, all hunger. Foundation without losing the fire. Your family looks at you differently now. There's pride in it. Genuine, chest-swelling pride that moves you every time you see it. But there's also a subtle shift. You become the one they call. Advice, decisions, problems. You are somehow the authority now, which is a strange gift and an impossible responsibility. You feel something like weight. The weight of being the one who made it. Of a family tree that stops bending under pressure the moment it reaches you. The weight of knowing that everything you build now echoes forward, not just through your life, but through lives that don't exist yet. Children and grandchildren. You moved the finish line. The coffee can is gone. Accounts with numbers your grandmother couldn't imagine. Options your mother was never supposed to have. You don't just break the ceiling for yourself. You remove it entirely for everyone who comes after you. They'll look up and see open sky and assume that's just what sky looks like. They won't know about the years you stared at the underside. They won't know about the 3 a.m. moments, the failed attempts, the loneliness. And that's the whole point. You didn't do this for a trophy. You did this so the next one doesn't have to start where you started. That's what generational wealth actually is. A different starting line. You built it out of nothing. You took the invisible ceiling and made it the floor. The view from here is nothing like you imagined. It's heavier, quieter, more real, and you wouldn't trade it for any version of easier. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. See you in the next.